Education is the passport to the future, for it belongs to those who prepare for it today. Malcolm X. Those of you seated in the crowd today, please raise your hand if you believe in that statement. Just as I thought, it's mostly unanimous. This is because education is the fabric of society that binds us together, that helps us understand each other, and that helps us understand the world. Today I'm going to begin with a story quite dear to my heart, a story about my parents. Both my parents grew up dirt poor in Zimbabwe. My father grew up in a village on the outskirts of Zimbabwe, and my mother grew up in the high-density areas of Harare, the capital city. Although my parents grew up dirt poor, that wasn't the reality they were going to face for the rest of their lives. As I am a living testament to that fact as I stand here with you guys today. My father was a mathematical genius growing up. He was academically sound in every other subject, but for him, math was king. My mother had the reading ability of an 18-year-old when she was 12. She would often tell me how she would read 1,000-page books in the libraries of St. Dominic's in mere days. I mean, if I could read a 1,000-page book in mere days, I think my exam result would be vastly different. So you see, my father went on to graduate with a Bachelor of Mathematics from the University of Zimbabwe and went on to be one of the first actuaries in Zimbabwe as well. Currently, he is now the CEO of a top insurance company in Zimbabwe. My mother, out of high school, went to work in banking and now is in top management in an insurance company as well. What I'm trying to illustrate here today is that this is the great power of education. The power to lift people out of poverty, garner innovation, raise awareness, and more. But education can continue to improve. It can be better. How can it be better? I look at it like this. Education is like a river. When it flows, it's beautiful, and the water is drinkable. But when it's stagnant, it's dirty, and you really don't want to drink that water. So let's explore how education can continue to flow and be beautiful. Education has followed a similar system and structure over the last 100 years, in the sense that education has become more accessible, it has led people to reach higher education, and people have been climbing up the educational ladder as we've been going up. In education, you move from early childhood education, which is nursery school, and you move from nursery school to primary school and then to high school. In these periods of learning, you go from lesson to lesson, and information is passed on to you from teacher to student. From this information that is passed on to you, you have to study for this exam in a timed fashion in periods of learning. People have different study methods. Some people study by reading the book. Some people study by cramming 10 years worth of past papers, and some people use their colored pens to write notes, and then they highlight and also colored pens in their books, hoping that the colors will magically make them remember all the content of the exam. This is the education of the classroom and long hours. The pros of this system are, it makes you disciplined and punctual. It allows you to have a grading certification, whereby when you're graded, you get to compete with your fellow peers, which fosters a lot of competition. The certification part of it is that you have a recognizable statement that you can take anywhere in the world, allowing you to start from where you left off. This is the certification element. These are the three best things about the current education of the classroom and long hours. But I can't talk about the pros only if we want to talk about improving education. I've got to talk about the cons. The cons of the education system right now is that it is not innovative for the student. It is merely the passing of information from teacher to student. Secondly, the large classrooms. We have lecture halls with 300 people in them, and the lecturer is sitting at the bottom of the classroom shouting to the guy at the back over there trying to speak to him when he's speaking to his friends, saying, man, I want to leave this lecture, man. Then you have the one curriculum. The idea that you have to focus on a certain set of subjects that makes sense to some educational policy guy, and when you follow that, you will come out with a certain type of degree. Then lastly, one test. The idea that we all test in the same way. We follow a certain set of rules, we follow a certain set of subjects, and we then follow a certain grading criteria of those subjects. This doesn't allow for people, this is not as accessible as we would hope it to be, because not everyone tests in the same way. For example, you can't expect a monkey to know how to swim and it's never been in water. Yes, I know, it's a weird comparison, but what often happens with people because of this kind of testing is people don't really interactively engage with the information. However, instead, they move to use the CPF method during the exam. Now, I'm not sure if you know what the CPF method is, but it's cram, pass, and forget. The education of the classroom and long hours. Now that we've looked at all of this, how can we move forward? How do we gauge where we want to go and what we want to bring out of the future? You see, we have to look at the definition of education itself. Education is the passing of information, the acquiring of knowledge, and the learning of skills, values, beliefs, and habits. When we look at the core definition, we have to really explore how can we shake it so that it can come together. So I believe there are 3 concrete steps that we can tackle to really achieve a better educational future. Number 1, develop an autonomous system that accounts for the individual differences among people. Number 2, we have to teach teachers to interactively engage with their students and not merely pass information on. And number 3, we have to foster critical thinking within our students. You know, the little kid in 4th grade who's always asking questions? That has to continue throughout the educational experience. But as most of you would probably guess, or if any educational advisor is in here, that is an initiative on the top of many boards in here, in the educational system, in the sense that these initiatives are already trying to be tackled. But what really is the problem? Why do we not feel like there's a movement happening to tackle these initiatives? This is because everything is largely slow. There's a bureaucratic process. It starts at the top with governmental initiatives being made. These governmental initiatives come down the bottom and finally get to the universities, the schools, the municipalities. By the time it gets to this point, new initiatives are coming around and new initiatives are trickling down. Do you see the problem? The problem here is speed. So, as TED Talk is about giving that one idea, I believe that we need to decentralize education. What I mean by this is we need to move the educational decision-making power away from the top and bring it back down to localities, municipalities, and the people who are involved in the day-to-day teachings of the education and the students. This is important because it will lead to faster decisions being made and policies being implemented faster. This allows us to truly realize the power of education. So, let's tear apart the old fabric, bring about this new fabric, and re-envision a powerful education for the future. Thank you.